Somebody can figure out to make it unnecessary that it happens, but here it's far from possible. Anyway, we're just trying to pass
She's Brenda Lane's
Yeah.
That's bad.
Elaine's my center, and I'm from
wherever there is.
We were high school. We were classmates. Elaine and I. Yeah, Elaine. But Elaine,
We'll go ahead and get started. First, I want to welcome everybody to the Ellsworth Correctional Facility. This is an exciting day for us. It's been a long time since we've had a governor at our facility, and so we're appreciative of that. We're also appreciative of our city, the people that run our city, the people that work in our city, the people that help us maintain what we do, and that we can partner with them and they partner with us. Our partners that work with our inmates, that provide jobs. It's just critical, and we thank you for that, and that's kind of what this day is about, and I don't want to speak about that because I'll let the governor do that. So again, thank you for coming, and appreciate you taking your time out of the day, and I'd like to introduce our Secretary of Corrections, Mr. Ray Roberts, and thank you for being here too, and I'll let you talk.
Well, thanks, Dan. I really appreciate what you do, and all the other staff that this Ellsworth Correctional Facility does. This is kind of like home for me. I was a warden here a few years ago, and it's always fun to come back. I just want to take just a few brief moments to make a few comments about the governor as it relates to him being a friend of corrections. And a lot of times you read things in the paper, and you hear discussions about the governor, this or that, and I want to tell you from my perspective, and believe me, this is not sucking up because I'm leaving in 2 months. So I want to tell you just exactly how it is relative to his support for us. Several things. Number one, the governor asked me when he interviewed me for this job how I felt about each offender getting a volunteer mentor before they leave prison and following them out into the community and helping them to adjust. I thought it was a pretty big job since we had 5,500 people that leave prison every year, and but we have made 6,400 mentor matches since January of 11, and that was all of the governor's vision, and it's really having an impact on recidivism. He'll talk some about that. The other thing that I wanted to let you know that in FY13, the state came up with some under-market funds, and it was just over $12 million. And I got a call in my office, and the governor said, Ray, what do you think about corrections getting some of this under-market funding? That's a great idea. And the essence of what came out of that was that the staff in our safety-sensitive positions, our uniform positions, and our counselors and some others, they got a 7.5% increase. And we got over half of that under-market funding for the whole state of Kansas in corrections. 2 or 3 years ago, we found ourselves at, I guess you'd say, in tough times with the legislature, where we were about to lose $18 million between FY15 and 16, I believe it was. And long story short, the governor vetoed the budget, and we got our funds back. And of course, $18 million hit for us would have been absolutely devastating. And the governor vetoed the entire budget. He's put $5 million more into offender programs over this administration. He's added $3 million to behavioral health interventions for community corrections for the 31 judicial districts. And we're already finding that those offenders out there that get the behavioral health interventions are coming back at about 33% less than those that do not. And so I couldn't say enough good things. And I guess the other thing is kind of interesting. The governor spent the night with us at Lansing in prison. And I've been doing this a long time. I've never spent the night in prison. Well, I did spend a night in Ellsworth when we opened our facility here. But I didn't have inmates in it. This did it at Lansing, and the governor and myself and Johnny and a friend of the governor's spent the night there, and it was all good. But thanks to the governor. I appreciate everything he's done, and he's got our best interests at heart. And with this, I'm going to turn it over to you, Governor.
Thanks, Ray. It's great to join you here in the Ellsworth community. I feel a little bad. I know a number of you ought to be out combining Milo right now, and so I'm sorry. Maybe as soon as we get it done, you can head. I know a couple of guys here in the front row are headed out shortly, and I know the county commission chairman. Are you supposed to be out there driving a truck now? I'm sorry. I hope your son doesn't kick you off the team here. They might do that. Oh. Well, anyway, you guys are great. And the community of Ellsworth, this area has long supported this facility in a great way, and I appreciate that, and it shows in what you've gotten done. We have some wonderful people here. I want to recognize particularly the legislators, because it's a tough job and they don't get paid much. So they do a fabulous job here. Stephen Johnson is here. Susan Concannon from the Beloit area. Troy Waymaster here as well. Troy did come off the grain truck to come here. Steve, have you been loafing or? No?
I didn't start it up yet this morning.
Started, okay, when this afternoon. They do a great job. It's a tough job, and I hope you get a chance to visit with them, meet them, and give them a hug. It's just kind of a hard job sometimes. So, yeah, look around there. And then I've got a cousin here, Dave Brownback. Dave and I spent the night here in this jail, or in this prison facility. That's been a few years back. No air conditioning, but they had the Finney fan in the window, and I was very thankful. That was the biggest thing Governor Finney had ever done for me, was that fan that night. Dave, I thought so too. Dave snores. But he's a great banker in the community. He's on the Federal Reserve Board for the Kansas City region, which is a big area, and that's a big job. But he's not the biggest Brownback treasure you have in town. The biggest treasure is Gene Brownback, his dad, who makes the best coconut cream pie I've had in recent years. Now, coconut cream pie is hard to make, and if you can make a good coconut cream pie, so if you ever get a chance to have Gene Brownback's coconut cream pie, I'm selling a lot of them here. He's going to have to. You have to get him back in the kitchen here, Dave, to get him going. But Dave and I grew up near each other, and Gene in the same area. And we just had a big family reunion 2 weekends ago where we had Brownbacks from all over the country at Cedar Crest. We had 155 there from 15 states. So it's kind of fun to see the family as it from the late 1700s migrated from Pennsylvania, Illinois, Kansas, and Oklahoma, and just kind of westward migration of Brownbacks, which Brownback means babbling brook. So I thought that's probably not a very good name for a politician to translate. And some others say, no, that's what you do all the time, so it's a good name. But it was fun, and it was interesting, and it was one of those American stories. When you got Gerhard Brownback lands here in 1780, and they eventually worked their way this way. Always looking for land. They were farmers, so they were always looking for land, because my dad never figured out he farms. Why on earth would you leave that good land in Illinois to come to Kansas? Because it rains there all the time. We get rain, we don't get rain. It varies quite a bit here, but they were out in search for more land, and that's what they found as they moved along. Also, I want to recognize and thank you for what you've done on the expansion of wind energy in this state. We're expecting another 8 new facilities. I know the one in Coffee County is going up now, and another 7, and I presume you're probably getting a couple of those in this area as much as you've built of wind energy. You guys ought to be flush with money, all the county commission, what you get out of those things. Not really? Okay. Trying to get some money for you. The school district chairman was asking for some money out of the county for it, but we should have, it'll be another $1 billion of wind energy going in probably even yet this year into the state of Kansas. Big expansion. We're one of the top 3 fastest growing wind energy states. The legislature did a great job this year there was a fight I'm going into this a little bit because it applies to your county. There'd been a fight going on between the renewable portfolio standard, those that supported it, those that were against it, those that were for wind, those that really think this is too heavily subsidized. It's a legitimate policy fight. Legislature figured its way through. Figured its way through that, settled that fight, and with that, then brought another $1 billion of investment into the state once that got resolved, and that's a big deal. $1 billion is hard to come by, and in rural Kansas, it can be really hard to come by. So to get those investments taking place is a great thing for us, and plus providing just a great portfolio of renewable energy that's pretty consistent, and that we've gotten a lot better at being able to provide. I still want you to paint them. I think it'd look really nice along I-70, all those, if they were painted kind of a brown stem and a yellow, like they look like sunflowers out there. Nobody's taken me up on that. I presume there's a really good reason why that's the case. A few quick thoughts, and then I'd like to open up for your questions or comments, because I want this to be a dialogue back and forth. Number one, thank you for the partnership back and forth between the community of Ellsworth and the corrections facility here. This has really been an excellent partnership back and forth. Community wanted the facility, sought it, got it less than 30 years ago, and has nurtured it. You've got a lot of private industries located even within the prison walls or the fencing of the facility. We find our inmates have to learn skills. If they don't, when they get out, the likelihood of them falling back into recidivism just goes up. It's pretty simple, really, and it's exactly what you would think, that idle minds are the devil's playground. It's an old proverb, and there's some truth to it. We need people that have a skill. They need to learn that, and they need to be able to learn how to be responsible and get to job and get the job done. And they can do that in prison. They're more likely to carry it on the outside. So this has really been a model for us on that. You've done a great job on education. Barton County Community College, the work that you guys have done within this facility to be able to get people to get an associate degree, get technical training. Again, something that's just really important. 97% of the guys, and it's mostly men, that we get in the prison system are going to get out at some time. 97%. They're going to pay their dues to society. They have done something wrong. There is a punishment that goes with that. They're going to pay that. Once they get out, we want to see, once they get out, we want to see that they don't come back. We want that recidivism rate as low as it possibly can be, so that while we've got them, we want to see them improving their life. We want to see them improving their thinking, so that they're not thinking like, I just need to go back into crime. Remember the guy yesterday, 7-time convict, 4 times he's been shot. Amazing he's still alive. He was a car thief, did drugs. He got out, and they were saying, well, let's work with you. You got a driver's license? And the guy goes, I don't need a driver's license. I steal cars. That was kind of the least of his worries. Well, but from our perspective, look, we don't want you stealing cars. We want you to get the driver's license so you can get to work and so you can be a productive citizen. And Barton County's been working on that a lot. I hope we can extend even more technical training into the prison populations, because I think that's an area we've had a big growth of in the state. State stepped up, legislature funded. We'll pay for all technical training while people are in high school. 230% enrollment increase. And it really fits a lot of our students. Well, I want to see us do more of that in our prison population too, because this is something that, let's get them a skill. Whether they can do HVAC, IT work, plumbing, heating, cooling, welding, building trades. We've got a shortage of construction workers in this state now. You got to be able to do it though. You can just show up and learn it, but it would be much better if you learned it and you showed up on the job and look, I know how to rough in a house. I know how to do the electrical. I know how to do something else, and we need that training for them, and you guys have been a strong partnership on doing that. Your Spiritual Life Center has been a partnership that the community itself has stepped up and paid for, the physical plant, and to help the development of the soul. Which I think has been just an absolutely invaluable asset that you've done as a community and working with people here. And then your Wheels for the World refurbishing program, which I'd seen previously here, continues to be just a wonderful model. So I want to thank you for all of those things. We don't want to rest on those. Right now, the big piece of the push now is to get a lot more mental health, substance abuse into the prison setting, because most of the guys have one or both of those problems. I say guys because it is mostly male population. And we're finding that as we've closed down mental health facilities across the country, your inpatient mental health facilities have been being closed down at state levels across the country for 30 years. Prisons have become the mental health hospital. Well, they're not going to get any better unless they get treatment. And we need to do better at treating them and integrating more of the mental health system. Legislature this year, in a very tight budget year, put $3 million more into mental health for prison populations. And it's a selfish interest on our part too, but because if we can get that guy to stabilize and not self-medicate, then think differently, the likelihood of him recidivism rate again goes down. And it's a good investment on our part. So I want to continue to get these two pieces, the mental health piece and the corrections piece, integrated much better, because they've become the inpatient, much more of an inpatient treatment facility for us now. So we're on that push strong. We're getting some nice growth taking place in the state, so I'm hopeful we're going to have good budget numbers coming forward. Been a bit of a mystery for us on the sales tax. It just hasn't been performing where we thought it would at this point in time, and kind of not sure at all why it isn't, because that's the one that has been underperforming for us. Hopefully it'll start popping back. People will have some confidence. Everybody thought with these low gas prices, with the economy growing, with good job numbers, with job wage growth taking place, we would see more sales tax, but so far it hadn't materialized much. Hopefully that'll turn back around. That's been kind of the key piece of the puzzle. We knew severance tax would be bad, because you cut your price of oil in half, your severance tax is going to be half. So you kind of know those pieces. Again, thanks for what you guys do as a community and the integration here, and we're going to continue to work moving forward in our corrections system to be a model corrections program for the country, and you guys are certainly a model facility and community for it. With that, let me open for comments or questions from the community. I know you got a great group here, and we've got several legislators that also could. Can I mention one other thing? And that's not just because Stephen Johnson's here, but because a lot of you know people or people here on CAPER's system, the pension system for the state of Kansas. That thing was in the bankruptcy zones, about 51% funded when I came into office. I was just in Detroit Monday of this week. Detroit took bankruptcy and it was off the pension system. Chicago may well take bankruptcy off the pension system. Now, Detroit's doing great now, because they dropped $20 billion of obligations, but you know who ate it? The pensioners ate it. Their pensions got cut in half out of that obligation. Now they've got a lot more current money that they can spend on police and firefighters and things right now in the system, and doing well. Good. But the problem of it is your pensioners, they got hammered. Now you could have, and we could have as a state, kind of said, let somebody else deal with this down the road, because we've put $450 million more into the pension system since I've become governor, over and above what we had projected to put in, nearly $500 million. And we could have had that money to put into schools, we could have had it to put into prisons, we could have had it to put into salaries, we could have had it to make bigger tax benefits for our people. These guys shouldered it and said, nope, we're not going to do that. They put $450 million more dollars, plus we just bonded $1 billion, which I gulped. I don't like borrowing $1 billion. To arbitrage the money. We got it at 4.59, 4.69% interest rates, $1 billion. We've been returns of 7 to 8%, pretty reliable in our CAPER system over a 20-year portfolio, and so we're arbitraging that money. We'd done this 20 years ago with $500 million. So we went out on a bit of a limb, but now instead of being 51% funded, we're 66% funded our pension system. We're not headed into the bankruptcy zone for our pensioners. They're not going to have to eat this. Now, we went to a defined contribution system for new hires this year, but current people that had been on for a while. And this is a real deal. These guys don't get thanked enough for it. It's not been recognized enough but that is a heavy lug. And so I get a lot of complaints about, well, you should have put more money here, you should have put more money there. And I've been saying that the pension system is ones that can eat you. And if you don't deal with it, you're headed to where Detroit is. And there will probably be states taking bankruptcy off of getting rid of their pension obligations. Puerto Rico, if they could, would be in bankruptcy right now. It's not a state, but they just don't have the bankruptcy laws. But you're going to see more of that. And I thought we did the responsible thing here, but it makes it harder. So Stephen was right. He was really in the middle of this fight, and these guys were all supportive of it. But it's just one of those things people don't see it. It is a big deal. We had a $10 billion hole there, and it's smaller. I'm sorry, long statement on it, but it's an important one. Yeah.
Yes, Governor. We appreciate what you said in your statement there, but affordable housing continues to be an issue in Ellsworth County and across rural Kansas. Is there a possibility the housing program that helped ease that need and also provided inmates with skills once they're released will return to the Ellsworth Correctional Facility?
Chance. I think we put $2 or $3 million into a moderate income housing. You have low income housing programs that exist, and those are mostly federal programs. This is a moderate income housing program that we've worked with in rural communities, and we've been really strapped budgetarily. But the hope is that we'd be able to be in a position to be able to do that. We cut our income taxes to get growth. We've gone on the Texas model. We went to zero taxes on small business to get people here to the state. We finally got our first good set of tax returns in 2013. We just got the data. 40% increase of adjusted gross income moving into the state from Missouri. We got finally census data from 2014. We finally got people moving into the state instead of out of the state. We've been losing people. We've been losing people for some time. So we're finally starting to see some of these things edge back, and as we grow, I hope we would have more opportunities, and one of our big problems has been rural housing. We don't have any houses. We're full, and what's out there, the stock is not very good. You need new housing stock. And I hope some people can try new models too. What problem we have is you can't charge enough rent to build a new house in a rural area. So one guy, he's looking at building a series of tiny houses that you can get in, literally get in, at a lower price point and rent it at a lower price point. But it's but it's small. It's like 800, 900 square feet. I think we need to start looking at other models on this too, so that we need housing stock. We really, in rural areas, it's a big problem. We need people too. We're full employment in almost all of rural Kansas. We need people. Any comments? Yes, sir.
Governor, my name is Terry Spexart. I'm the mayor of the city of Colwich, and I'd like to thank Ellsworth, the correctional facility. We're one of the cities that benefit twice now on the fire truck, revitalization on the fire truck. Good. 2 years ago, they had one of our twins. We can't afford to refurbish it. Others don't have the knowledge to do it. So I want to thank you all for that. Also, we just got one of our brush trucks that we brought in here that we're, I don't know, maybe a month away or so or something like that. But I want to thank you all for letting us provide us the service, something that we could never afford to do. We're a small community of 1,400 people northwest of Wichita, and I want to thank you all for doing it. We do appreciate it very much. Hear that.
How about let's tell everybody a little bit about the squeeze chute you make here in the prison that my brother bought.
Well, yeah, your brother owns one of these. Actually.
Yeah, please stand up, tell everybody.
Well, our company is called Molly Manufacturing, and we build hydraulic cattle handling equipment. And we've been fortunate enough to grow this market out of Ellsworth County and sell it all over the world. This is actually one of our dealers from Australia that so happened to be here that came in yesterday, and I said, Colin, why don't you just come along with us? So these are some of our international sales as well that we build all in Ellsworth County and a little bit in Reno County. But we started this company in about 1988 and have grown it. And our inmate, we couldn't be here if it wasn't for the Ellsworth Correctional Facility. there's where we're located, our original location is by Lorain, Kansas.
Yeah.
And it's a very small community.
Yeah, well, how big is Lorraine?
About 150 people, and that's including a couple of dogs too. To get, I don't know, 130.
Molly and Bill, huh?
We don't have a post office anymore, but it does really doesn't matter. Our service is better now than maybe it's good, so we have no problem there. But if it wasn't for this correctional facility, we just couldn't do what we're doing. But I think some of the great things that we're seeing out of this, beyond that, is these guys that are getting out, they're just not returning. And I was told here just recently about how these guys are doing so well. They're getting out of the system and growing and not returning back into the system. And I think that's really big. And Johnny Goddard has been a good one, and Ray has really helped us make this program work here. They kind of got me started with it, and they kind of pushed me along, and we've got it going here, and it's been working well. And now we're opening another facility in here.
Inside the prison
Yes.
walls. Okay.
Yeah. And so we're just getting ready to ramp that up. So we're pretty excited about that.
Keep it up. Keep it up. Glad to hear that. And Johnny told me we have the chaplain of the world.
Champion of the world.
That's what Johnny called him. Said the world. He won the chaplain of the world competition.
That's Johnny talking.
No, but you won it for Salvation Army in the United States. You were chaplain of the year. Congratulations, and working and helping us out here. Yeah.
May I follow up on the question?
Yeah,
that
please.
people were asking? At one time, with respect to this housing, with respect to the getting inmates trades, we were able to build houses inside and then sell them to the local community. I think the question might have been.
I see.
Is there a possibility of trying to get back into that kind of a program?
What stopped that in the first place?
We had the Manufacturing Association felt like that what we were doing was competing with them, and they pretty much, the legislature enacted
Was
a
it?
law to limit us to just building cabinets for wildlife parks.
We were building roughly 3 houses inside the gates, and then selling them here locally. And it really helped out with our housing because the cost of houses currently,
Yeah.
you can't, it's not even low income, moderate income situations. It was houses that were staying here locally, that were going on lots that allowed families to buy.
I don't remember that fight. Do you guys remember
Yeah.
that one?
Yeah.
I remember it well.
If one of you want to answer the question, because I missed the question, then if you want, somebody want to stand up and
Well,
tell the rest
Well,
of
I
it
will
there.
answer it well because I voted against what the legislature did on that.
As did I.
So the concern was the manufactured housing, and particularly as you look at the state level, was concerned about the competition that could provide and whether that put pressure on some areas. And at that point, there was some pressure on housing recovery as we came out of the 08-09 timeframe, and I think that was the piece that was there. But to share the feedback as we look at how can we come up with innovative programs to the housing solution, I think that was your question. Here was one model where a house could be built, brought out at a low cost, without a ton of expense. It was a value to our economy as somebody poured the driveway and built the concrete and did everything else. So our local contractors did well. We had a low entry point house that was a quality product. And I gave somebody, you can tell me how to drive a combine, but I'm going to learn how to do it when I grab a hold of it. So you had somebody that had dropped in, had done the electrical, had done the HVAC, and could carry that as a hard skill out. So that's the part we as a community saw and would push back to say, okay, there's perhaps a state issue that is carried by the manufactured housing industry, both at a particular time and to the state, but there are needs in the community, both to address recidivism and economic development, and how might we balance that? So I'd actually join the chorus against what we did in the legislature to say, how might we look at balancing that to bring there's a real opportunity that it provides for us here to consider the ability to do one, two. We don't need enough houses to bring a manufactured housing person here, but we could sure use one or two every so often, and that's what the prison provided. So.
Maybe what we'd do is somebody, one of your local reps, offer an amendment to cap it at 5 or whatever your number is, so that maybe the manufactured housing people wouldn't be upset by it. I'd be supportive of it. Anything we can do to get some jobs and train people, but probably you need to do it in such a way that you don't get the big association. Because I argued on this issue federally. I fought to make sure that in prisons we could do work, and I lost federally. That's one of those things where, hey, look, we don't want this. We don't want the competition. And I'm going, it's not about competition. It's about keeping this guy out of jail in the future. That's what we're about. But we lost. So we've got some pretty limited federal rules too. But I tried with just a limited number, and let's see what happens. Sorry, I didn't answer. I didn't understand quite the question. Mr. Commissioner.
My son bought the last house in Guilt here.
Who did?
My son.
Oh, did he?
Put it on the farm. And the workmanship on his house is extremely good.
Oh, good.
Very
Okay.
well built.
All right. Well, let's see. And you got a couple people you can work with up here as well. Other comments, or Dave?
One more comment about that issue. Unlike the suburban areas, spec houses just don't work here.
Yeah.
And we finance one about every 10 years because it takes us 10 years to forget how bad it was. And because they just aren't worth what it costs to build them.
Yeah.
So we do have an issue. And it wouldn't take very many, but you 1 or 2 or 3 a year, 5.
Now, Oakley, Kansas, I thought came up with an interesting answer. They went to some of their leading citizens and said, will you build a new house for yourself? And about 7 or 8 of them families did. And that opened up 7 or 8 houses in the community. And it's about what they needed at the time. So some of you leading citizens here, why don't talk with your spouse about building a house? And that's because now we got some stock that we're dealing with. Because the financing model is just, you can't charge the rent and you can't get the price that it takes. And we're construction workers short now in the state. We really need construction workers, and so that drives the price of it too. Anybody else on anything? Hey, well, let me go here and then be happy to. Yeah,
well,
President.
As a representative of Barton Community College, we're just very appreciative of the partnership that we have with the Department of Corrections, Ellsworth Correctional Facility. A common goal is to improve people's lives after they pay their debt to society, provide training, providing opportunity. We have something that works very well here, and we're just very pleased, and I'm just appreciative of your recognition as well, Governor. Thank you.
Happy to do it. Thank you guys for what you're doing, and we're hopeful of doing. I want to see more technical training getting into the prison population. I think it'll just help us longer term. Plus, I'm going to stay at Cheyenne Bottoms next week sometime because it's part of the bird migration going through, and this is one of the gems, literally, of the state ecologically is Cheyenne Bottoms, and then Quivira is a federal facility, and I hope we can gin this up as a tourist activity more and more, because birders often will travel all over the country to see their bird. And these aren't the ones that shoot their bird. These are the ones that I want a picture of it. But this is a gem of a facility, and now we got some water. We didn't have water 2 years ago, and so now we got some water that they're willing to. Oh yeah, I remember that spot. Yeah, it's got some water there now. It's great, but it's a great facility. We're hopeful of ginning that up more tourism-wise. Plus, the pheasant hunt's going to be much better this year. And the prairie chickens are back, not because of the federal rule, but because we got rain. We got more prairie chickens, so. Anybody else? Sir?
Try this one.
Well, let's see if I understand and get this one
You
better.
have supported the Kansas Department of Corrections through a line item veto and other actions. However, the fact remains the state's prisons are having difficulty finding and retaining staff. Bucking employees here and at other state facilities expect an increase in salary to match the work they do, they're being asked to do?
Well, that one I do understand, and I was at El Dorado just before this, and we were talking about that very issue. And we're having a lot of overtime pay. Ray, you were telling me the numbers earlier, but what's our overtime pay that we've been doing?
In 3 years, we've increased overtime like $1.3 million.
So we're having to do more overtime pay, which is not an efficient way of doing this. You'd be better off paying, keeping your people, and not having to do the overtime. We've been in very tight budgets. And what a number of places that have state employees are doing, universities have all gone to unclassified employees. The entire university classified structure went unclassified by vote. The unions on the various campuses, like closest one here would be Fort Hays, voted instead of being classified, they voted to be unclassified. Then they're under the university, and the university has some different pots of money, and they've figured a way then that they can give salary increases and not have to wait on the entire ship to rise. Because if you're in the classified system, it's got to be an across the board, or you can get step increases. I mean, as you improve, you can get step increases, but what happens, somebody after 5-10 years, if they don't move to a different position, they can end up they're stepped out, so they don't have a raise that they can go to past that. And so some places are doing that on unclassified, and I think that's a good way to go. Less opportunity to do that in the corrections system, and so we'll try to get in a position where we can do some across the boards for people. But otherwise, what we've been working with is just how can we get folks into a position where they can get a pay increase, because we haven't had across-the-board pay increases. You've had one in the corrections and police officer, or the law enforcement. We had one in fiscal year 13. That was more recent than most state employees. It's been ever since 08, 09, the budgets have really been tight. We put a lot of money into 3 categories: K-12, Medicaid, pensions. Those get 2/3, 3/4 of the money. More than that, probably 80% of the money, I think, for the state. So sorry that that's not a better answer, but we will try to, and we've got ways we're going at it, but it's been hard. Thank you all. Appreciate you guys joining us. Oh, you got one there, sir? Yeah.
As far as the funding, would it, as a private industry employer, would it be possible that some of the money that's earned from private industry employees that they pay back to the state, like for example, about 25% of what a private industry welder was working in a shop goes back to the state of Kansas into a general fund? Wouldn't it be more feasible to take that money earned from this private industry and put it into a fund that would be more specific to the DOC to be used for such?
Yeah, I think some of that happened. Ray, do you or Johnny want to handle that question? Because we've had a big growth in private wage. You've doubled the size in the last 5 years. Ray, why don't you come up here on the mic and answer that?
Well, we've increased private industry during the governor's administration by about 50%. And what that translates to is about inmates paying back about $3.5 million up to $6 million. Now it's about a $6 million amount. And so it's good. It's good for everybody. People like to see offenders pay room and board, and we like savings account. Victims like to be paid, and it's a good thing for us. As it relates to,
say there's more that can be done?
Pardon?
Yeah, I'm just asking if perhaps some of that money could be paid more towards accounts like across the board.
Well, Governor, the funds that are generated through the private industry go to Kansas Correctional Industries. Now, offenders that are in work release settings, that goes back to the general fund. But if you're in a private industry, the money goes back to Kansas Correctional Industries, and that money is used to create more industry and improve and programs. We get about $1 million in program dollars from KCI from that money. So
But
it's-
you're asking if more of it could go back into the corrections system, bigger piece
Instead
of
of the
it.
general fund, go back to the corrections fund.
Yeah, that money goes into the Kansas Correctional Industries, that 25% room and board goes into Kansas Correctional Industries. And Kansas Correctional Industries pays for programs such as your GED and all the different programs, the substance abuse and all those programs. They help fund that by, I think, Brad Jurgensen told me it was a little over $3 million. I don't know if that was over 3 years or what, but, so that money goes back to Kansas Correctional Industries, so it does go to Department of Corrections. And, of course, Kansas Correctional Industry, or, work release goes to the general fund. Yeah, and there's only 200 inmates in 250 inmates in work release, so.
Before we wrap up here, Ray Roberts announced his retirement. Ray's done 40 years in the corrections system overall, 3 different states. Great guys from Mississippi originally. Just he and his wife been up here, and I think it's a bittersweet time a little bit for Ray because he's done so much and been so positive. He raised the funds that you guys put together for the Spiritual Life Center here. And he did it at El Dorado as well, and those are wonderful facilities, but he's really had a heart and a mind for corrections. I hate to see him go. I'd love to see him stay on, but his wife's weary of him commuting back and forth, and I understand. But if you wouldn't mind joining me in a round of applause for Ray Roberts. Thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Yeah.
Thanks for being there, guys, to field
Thanks
those.
for being here. Yeah, I'll look forward to following up with you.